The diplomatic incident. The Galactic Trade Summit convened once every solar cycle aboard Meridian 7, a massive diplomatic station floating in neutral space between 5 major stellar empires. The station gleamed like a jewel against the darkness, its crystalline structures reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside its grand assembly hall, representatives from 234 civilizations gathered to negotiate trade routes, resolve disputes, and maintain the fragile peace that held the galaxy together. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the enormous corridors with measured steps. She was a woman of 42 years with dark hair pulled back in a simple knot and calm gray eyes that missed nothing. Behind her followed her small delegation of 3 humans, each carrying data pads and diplomatic credentials. They looked unremarkable compared to the massive aliens that filled the halls around them. Some species stood 12 feet tall with armor-plated skin. Others had multiple limbs designed for combat. A few existed as energy beings that crackled with visible power. The humans had soft skin, no natural weapons, and average height. They drew curious glances and occasional dismissive snorts from the warrior races. It was always the same reaction when humans appeared at galactic gatherings. The species of Earth had joined the interstellar community only 90 years ago, and most older civilizations still viewed them as newcomers who had yet to prove themselves in the harsh reality of galactic politics. Sarah had attended 4 previous summits. She knew exactly what the other species thought of humanity. She also knew they were completely wrong about what humans were capable of, but that knowledge was not something she shared freely. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. The assembly hall was a cathedral of diplomatic achievement. The ceiling rose 300 feet overhead, made of transparent material that showed the stars beyond. Seating arrangements descended in circular tiers toward a central speaking platform. Each species had designated areas based on their political influence and military strength. The Cat Hex Confederation occupied the highest tier, as they controlled the largest fleet. The Vorten Unity sat just below them with their economic power. The Zalkran Empire held the 3rd tier with their reputation for conquest and their massive armies. Humanity sat in the outer rings with the other minor powers and newly emerged civilizations. The positioning was deliberate and symbolic. Those in the outer rings were expected to listen more than speak, to learn from their betters, and to accept whatever terms the stronger species deemed appropriate. Sarah took her seat and arranged her materials. Her assistant, Daniel Park, sat beside her with his recording equipment. He was a young man of 28 with sharp features and nervous energy that he hid well. Next to him sat Dr. Yuki Tanaka, humanity's chief xenobiologist, and Marcus Webb, a military observer who rarely spoke but noticed everything. The summit chairman, a towering being called High Mediator Vrex from the Cat Hex Confederation, called the assembly to order. His voice boomed through translation devices that every species wore. The first day proceeded normally with discussions of shipping lane disputes and tariff adjustments. Species argued and compromised and made agreements that would govern commerce for the next cycle. The humans mostly observed and took notes. On the second day, the Zalkran Empire made its move. Commander Thex rose from his seat in the 3rd tier and commanded immediate attention. He stood 9 feet tall with scales that looked like polished bronze and eyes that glowed with predatory intelligence. His species had evolved as apex predators on a harsh world, and they had carried that nature with them into space. The Zalkran Empire controlled 42 star systems through military conquest, and they were always looking to expand. Thex's voice carried across the hall with absolute confidence. The Zalkran Empire has identified 7 star systems currently claimed by minor species that lack the strength to properly defend or develop them. We are formally declaring our intention to annex these systems for the benefit of galactic civilization. Resources should not be wasted in the hands of those too weak to utilize them properly. A murmur ran through the assembly. This was aggressive even by Zalkran standards. The 7 systems Thex referenced included 2 human colonies, one of which was New Terra, humanity's most successful off-world settlement with a population of 3 million people. Sarah remained perfectly still in her seat. Her face showed no reaction. Daniel glanced at her nervously, but she gave a slight shake of her head. Not yet. High Mediator Vrex spoke carefully. Commander Thex, such declarations require extensive review. The species you reference have legitimate territorial claims registered with the Galactic Council. Thex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Legitimate claims require legitimate strength. The humans, for example, have 2 colonies in our desired expansion zone. They possess no significant military fleet. They have no defensive installations worth mentioning. They are farmers and scientists playing at being a starfaring civilization. The Zalkran Empire will give them fair compensation for their settlements, but these systems will be ours. Another species representative spoke up. The humans may appeal to the Council for protection. Then let them appeal, Thex replied. The Council has no obligation to protect species that cannot protect themselves. That is the law of the galaxy. The strong endure and the weak serve or perish. This has always been the way. Sarah Chen stood slowly. The movement drew attention because she had been so still throughout the exchange. She stepped down to the speaking platform with unhurried grace. When she reached the center, she looked up at Commander Thex in his elevated seat. Her expression remained calm and neutral. Ambassador Chen, Vrex acknowledged. You wish to respond? I do, Sarah said. Her voice was quiet but clear, amplified by the translation systems. Commander Thex has made certain claims about humanity and our capabilities. Before he proceeds with his plans, I would like to offer a warning. Thex leaned forward with obvious amusement. A warning? From you? Please enlighten us, little human. What warning could you possibly offer to the Zalkran Empire? Sarah met his glowing eyes without flinching. If you move military forces into human territory, if you threaten our colonies, if you attempt to claim what is ours, you will activate our consequence protocols. Once those protocols begin, they cannot be stopped. I urge you to reconsider. The assembly hall erupted in surprised chatter. Several species laughed openly. The idea that humans could threaten the mighty Zalkran Empire seemed absurd. Thex's amusement turned to anger. Consequence protocols. What kind of weapon do you imagine you possess that concerns us? We have scanned your colonies. We know your military capability. You have 12 patrol ships. 12. The Zalkran Empire has 8,000 warships. Our armies number in the billions. Our weapons can crack planets. What exactly do you think you can do to us? Sarah's expression never changed. We do not use weapons the way you understand them, Commander. We do not fight wars. We do not invade or bombard or siege. When a species forces us to act, we use methods that other civilizations do not possess and cannot comprehend. I am giving you this warning now as a courtesy. Walk away from your claims on human systems. Pursue other territories. Do not make us show you what we are capable of. The hall had fallen silent. Everyone was watching this exchange with intense interest. A minor species was challenging a major military power. This was unprecedented. Thex stood to his full imposing height. You think your mysterious words frighten me? You think vague threats mean anything? The Zalkran Empire has conquered 42 worlds. We have destroyed 17 civilizations that opposed us. We fear nothing in this galaxy, especially not soft creatures who hide behind warnings instead of showing strength. He pointed one clawed hand toward Sarah. I will give you 48 hours to evacuate your colonists from New Terra and your other settlement in our expansion zone. After that time, our fleet will arrive. If any humans remain, they will become subjects of the Zalkran Empire. If you attempt to resist, we will demonstrate what real military power looks like. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. You have 48 hours. Thex sat back down. The Zalkran delegation around him roared with approval. Other warrior species in the assembly nodded with respect at this show of dominance. This was how galactic politics worked. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak accepted their fate. Sarah stood on the platform for one more moment. "I have delivered my warning," she said quietly. "What happens next is your choice, Commander Thex. I hope your gods are merciful, because we are not." She turned and walked back to her seat. The assembly dissolved into excited conversation. Most species were discussing how humanity would respond. Would they evacuate and surrender? Would they make a futile military stand? Would they beg the Council for intervention that would not come? High Mediator Vrex tried to restore order. "This summit will take a recess while the Council considers these developments. We will reconvene in 6 hours to discuss potential mediation." As the various delegations filed out, Ambassador Chen gathered her team. They walked through the corridors in silence until they reached their private quarters aboard the station. Once inside, Daniel finally spoke. "They are really going to do it. The Zalkran fleet will reach New Terra in 2 days. 3 million people, Sarah. We need to start evacuations now." Sarah sat down and opened her secure communication device. "We will evacuate. But not because we are surrendering. Marcus, send the code phrase to Earth Command." Marcus Webb, who had not spoken once during the summit, pulled out his own encrypted communicator. He typed in a specific sequence and sent it. The message contained only 3 words: "Protocol silence authorized." On Earth, deep beneath the Gobi Desert, systems that had been dormant for decades began to activate. Dr. Yuki Tanaka watched Sarah carefully. "How many times has protocol silence been used?" "Twice," Sarah replied. "The Vexer clan 70 years ago when they attacked our first colony ship. The Nethrin swarm 40 years ago when they tried to harvest our home system. Both times, humanity tried diplomacy first. Both times, we were ignored. Both times, we had to show them what happens when you force our hand." Daniel was pale. "And both of those species are gone. Completely gone. No survivors, no remnants, just empty ships and empty worlds." "They made their choices," Sarah said. Her voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. "Thex has made his choice too. We gave him the warning. We gave him the chance to walk away. Now we wait and see if he was wise enough to listen." Outside the station, the Zalkran Empire was already mobilizing. Commander Thex had sent orders to his fleet. 800 warships began moving toward human space. Thex was confident and proud. He would show the galaxy what happened when minor species challenged Zalkran authority. He would make an example that would be remembered for generations. He had no idea that he and his entire civilization had less than 48 hours of existence remaining. The Silence Protocol. The Zalkran fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal predators. 800 warships formed a perfect attack formation as they crossed into the outer boundaries of human territory. Each ship bristled with weapons capable of reducing cities to ash. Each carried thousands of soldiers trained from birth for conquest. Commander Thex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Worldbreaker, and watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. His second-in-command, Officer Kryn, reviewed the scans of their destination. "New Terra is directly ahead, Commander. We will reach orbital position in 6 hours. Our sensors show significant evacuation activity. Transport ships are leaving the surface and heading toward the outer system." Thex nodded with approval. "Good. The humans are showing wisdom by fleeing. Perhaps they are not as foolish as I thought. Still, we will pursue their transports and capture them. Those colonists will make excellent laborers for our mining operations." Kryn hesitated before speaking again. "Commander, there is something unusual. The human defense ships are also pulling back. All 12 of their patrol vessels have abandoned their positions. They are not forming any defensive line at all. They are simply retreating alongside the civilian transports." "Of course they are retreating," Thex said with contempt. "They know they cannot fight us. 12 patrol ships against our fleet would last less than a minute. The humans are cowards. They make empty threats and then run when real power appears. But something nagged at Thex's mind. He remembered the human ambassador's calm expression, her absolute certainty when she delivered her warning. She had not seemed afraid. She had not seemed desperate. She had seemed like someone who knew a secret that others did not. Thex pushed the thought away. He had conquered too many worlds to doubt himself now. Across the galaxy, other species had learned of the confrontation. Many had sent observer vessels to document what would happen. This was an important moment in galactic politics. If the Zalkran Empire could simply take human territory without consequence, it would set a precedent. Other powerful species might start claiming systems from weaker civilizations. The balance of power would shift dramatically. Observer Captain Selen of the Anthari Collective positioned her ship at a safe distance from New Terra. The Anthari were a neutral species known for their scientific approach and detailed record-keeping. Selen had been assigned to document this incident for the Galactic Historical Archives. She expected to record a military conquest, possibly a brief and one-sided battle, followed by human surrender. Her equipment was sophisticated enough to capture everything in precise detail. What she actually recorded would change galactic civilization forever. On New Terra's surface, the evacuation was proceeding with remarkable efficiency. The human colonists moved quickly but without panic. Transport ships landed, filled with people and essential equipment, and then departed into space. Governor James Rodriguez supervised the operation from the Central Command Center. He was a man of 55 with sun-weathered skin and tired eyes that had seen too much responsibility. "That is the last civilian transport," his aide reported. "Everyone is evacuated. Total time, 37 hours. Faster than the drills," Rodriguez observed. "What about the infrastructure?" "Everything non-essential has been left intact. The cities are empty but undamaged. Power systems are still running on automatic. The Zalkran will find functioning settlements waiting for them." Rodriguez nodded. "That was the instruction. We do not destroy what we built. We simply remove ourselves." "How long until the fleet arrives?" 5 hours and 12 minutes. "Then we have time." Rodriguez pulled out his communicator and entered a secure frequency. "This is New Terra Command. Requesting final authorization for protocol silence, local activation." The response came from Earth, from a facility that most humans did not know existed. "Authorization confirmed, Governor Rodriguez. Local protocol silence is approved for New Terra system. All human vessels and personnel must be beyond a threshold boundary before activation. You have 4 hours." Rodriguez looked around the command center one last time. He and his team had built this colony from nothing. 3 million people had made lives here, raised children here, created something beautiful and new. Now they were leaving it all behind, not because they were weak, but because what was coming next would make the planet temporarily uninhabitable for any living thing. "All personnel to the final transport," he ordered. "We are leaving." The last human ship departed New Terra 30 minutes before the Zalkran fleet arrived. Commander Thex watched the empty planet appear on his displays. Cities gleamed below, their lights still shining. Agricultural fields stretched across continents. Orbital platforms floated in perfect working order. Everything was intact and abandoned. "It is ours," Thex announced to his crew. "The humans gave up without a fight. Let this be a lesson to the galaxy. Strength is the only language that matters. Send word to the other 6 systems on our list. They have 24 hours to evacuate before we claim them as well." His officers cheered. The Zalkran Empire had just gained a valuable colony world without firing a single shot. It was a glorious day. Thex walked to the large viewport on his bridge and looked down at New Terra. "Prepare landing forces. We will establish our garrison immediately." This world will become a regional command center for future expansion into human space. We will. He stopped speaking. Something felt wrong. The sensation came suddenly, a feeling of disorientation that made no sense. Vex shook his head to clear it. Around him, his officers were acting strangely. Some had stopped in mid-motion. Others were looking around in confusion. "Commander?" Kryn said, but his voice sounded distant and hollow. Vex tried to respond but found he could not form words. The bridge around him seemed to be fading, becoming less solid, less real. He could see through the walls to the stars beyond. He could see through his own hands. A terrible understanding began to dawn in his mind. The human ambassador had not been making empty threats. She had been delivering a precise and accurate warning about something that Vex had not believed could exist. Observer Captain Selen watched through her instruments as the Zalkran fleet reached New Terra. She recorded their arrival, their scanning of the planet, their communications declaring victory. Her equipment captured every detail in perfect clarity. Then, exactly 4 hours and 7 minutes after the last human ship departed the system, something impossible happened. The Zalkran fleet stopped transmitting. Every ship went silent at precisely the same instant. No distress calls, no weapons fire, no explosions. Just sudden, complete silence. Selen checked her instruments frantically. "Are we experiencing equipment failure?" Her science officer checked multiple systems. "Negative, Captain. All our equipment is functioning perfectly. The silence is real. 800 Zalkran warships have stopped all communication simultaneously." "Move closer," Selen ordered. "I need detailed scans." Her ship approached the Zalkran fleet carefully. As they drew near, the scanner readings became clear, and Selen felt a chill run through her entire body. The Zalkran ships were intact. Their hulls showed no damage. Their power systems were still running. Their weapons were still charged. But there were no life signs aboard any vessel. Not one. "How is this possible?" her science officer whispered. 800 ships. Millions of Zalkran soldiers and crew. All gone. Where did they go? Selen expanded her scans to include the entire system. The results made no sense according to any science she understood. The Zalkran fleet hung in space like a ghost armada. Empty vessels that should have been filled with life. The ship's internal systems were still functioning. Food was still warm in the dining areas. Personal belongings were still in crew quarters. Everything was exactly as it had been moments before, except every single Zalkran was gone. "Send an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council," Selen ordered. Her voice shook slightly. "Tell them we need immediate investigation teams. Something has happened here that we cannot explain. The humans have done something that should not be possible." The news reached the Galactic Council within hours. High Mediator Vrex called an emergency session. Species representatives gathered in shock and confusion. Observer Captain Selen's report was played for the entire assembly. The images showed the empty Zalkran fleet in perfect detail. Ships with no crews. Vessels with no commanders. An entire military force that had simply vanished. "This must be a trick," someone said. "The Zalkran are hiding. This is some kind of tactical deception." But more reports were coming in. Investigation teams had reached the Zalkran home system. What they found there created absolute panic in the council chambers. The Zalkran homeworld was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, just empty. Cities stood intact. Vehicles sat in streets. Buildings were undamaged. But there were no Zalkran anywhere. A population of 8 billion had vanished completely. All 42 Zalkran colony worlds showed the same result. Intact infrastructure, functioning systems, and no inhabitants. The entire Zalkran Empire, every single member of the species across dozens of star systems, had disappeared in the same instant. They had not died. They had not been killed. They had simply ceased to exist in normal space. Ambassador Sarah Chen was summoned before the emergency council session. She walked to the central platform with the same calm demeanor she always showed. Around her, hundreds of species representatives stared with expressions ranging from horror to absolute terror. These were civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, species that thought they understood the universe and its rules. Sarah was about to explain that they understood nothing. High Mediator Vrex spoke first, and for the first time since Sarah had met him, his voice showed fear. Ambassador Chen, what has happened to the Zalkran Empire? Where are they? What have you done? Sarah took a slow breath before responding. Commander Thex was warned. He was told explicitly that if he moved against human territory, our consequence protocols would activate. He chose not to listen. What has happened is the direct result of his decision. But what has happened? Vrex demanded. Where are the Zalkran? Are they dead? Did you kill billions of beings? No, Sarah said quietly. The Zalkran are not dead. Death implies that they once existed in a state we all share and then ceased to exist. That is not what occurred here. The Zalkran have been displaced. They have been removed from our dimensional reality and placed in an isolated dimensional pocket where they can no longer interact with our universe. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several species called out denials. Others demanded more explanation. A few simply stared in silent terror. Sarah continued speaking, her voice cutting through the noise. Humanity developed this technology 70 years ago after our first contact with alien life resulted in unprovoked attacks. We call it Protocol Silence. It is based on advanced dimensional physics that most species have not yet discovered. When activated, the protocol identifies every member of a specific species through quantum genetic signatures. It then shifts all individuals of that species into a separate dimensional layer that exists parallel to our own but cannot interact with it. That is impossible, someone shouted. No species has such technology. Humanity does, Sarah replied simply. We do not use it lightly. We do not use it as a weapon of conquest or aggression. We use it only as a final defensive measure when all other options have been exhausted. Commander Thex was given a clear warning. He was offered the chance to walk away. He refused. The consequences are his responsibility, not ours. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stepped forward to provide additional explanation. The Zalkran still exist. They are alive in their dimensional pocket. They are experiencing time normally. From their perspective, nothing has changed except they can no longer see or interact with our universe. They have their ships, their worlds, their infrastructure. They are simply isolated, permanently separated from the rest of galactic civilization. High Mediator Vrex gripped the arms of his seat. Can they be brought back? Can this process be reversed? Sarah shook her head. No. Protocol Silence is irreversible. Once activated, the dimensional displacement becomes permanent. The Zalkran will exist in their isolated reality for as long as they survive there. They cannot return. They cannot communicate with us. They cannot threaten anyone ever again. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Every species representative was calculating the implications. Humanity possessed the ability to remove entire civilizations from existence without firing a weapon, without destroying infrastructure, without leaving bodies or evidence of violence. They could simply erase a species from reality with surgical precision. A brave or perhaps foolish representative from a warrior species called the Crothan stood to speak. This is a war crime. You have committed genocide against an entire species. Sarah turned to face him directly. The Zalkran declared war on humanity. They moved military forces into our territory with the stated intention of conquest and enslavement. We gave them warning. We gave them time to reconsider. They chose violence. We chose removal. Which of us committed the crime? You could have fought them, the Crothan insisted. You could have defended your colony with military force. And how many would have died in that fight? Sarah asked. How many human colonists? How many Zalkran soldiers? How many billions of lives lost in warfare that stretches across years or decades? Protocol silence ended the conflict in one moment without a single death, without a single destroyed world. The Zalkran are alive in their dimensional pocket. They have everything they had before except the ability to harm others. Is that not more merciful than conventional warfare? No one had an answer to that question. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had considered humanity weak and insignificant. Let me be absolutely clear about humanity's position. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We do not want to conquer or subjugate other species. We want peace. We want to trade, to learn, to build positive relationships with all civilizations. But we will not be victims. We will not allow others to attack us with impunity. Any species that chooses violence against humanity will face protocol silence. This is not a threat. This is simply a statement of fact. She paused to let her words sink in. We have now used protocol silence 3 times in our history. 3 species forced us to activate it through their own aggressive actions. We hope we never have to use it again. Whether that happens depends entirely on the choices that other civilizations make. The emergency session ended shortly after. Species representatives departed in thoughtful and fearful silence. The galaxy had fundamentally changed in a matter of hours. Warfare between civilizations did not stop completely, but wars involving human interests ended immediately. Border disputes that might have escalated to violence were suddenly resolved through negotiation. Trade disagreements that could have led to conflicts were settled at diplomatic tables. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. Humanity did not fight wars. Humanity did not engage in conventional military conflicts. Humanity did not conquer or invade. But humanity could erase entire civilizations from reality if forced to act. The safest option, the only rational option, was to leave humanity alone and resolve any disputes through peaceful means. Years passed, then decades. Humanity's position in galactic civilization evolved rapidly. Their seat in the council moved from the outer rings to the center. Their votes carried enormous weight. Their diplomatic suggestions were taken seriously. Not because other species loved or admired humanity, but because they feared what would happen if they pushed humanity too far. Sarah Chen served as ambassador for another 15 years before retiring. In her final address to the Galactic Council, she spoke words that would be remembered and quoted for generations. Fear is not the foundation we wanted for galactic peace, she said. We would have preferred trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. But we accept the reality we have been given. If fear of protocol silence keeps civilizations from warring with each other, if the knowledge of what humanity can do prevents violence and saves lives, then perhaps fear serves a purpose. We hope that someday, fear will be replaced by genuine understanding and friendship. Until that day comes, humanity will remain watchful and ready. We will always offer peace first. But we will always be prepared to do what is necessary. The chamber remained silent after she finished speaking. Sarah collected her materials and left the council for the last time. Behind her, representatives from hundreds of species sat in thoughtful silence, considering the strange situation they found themselves in. The weakest-looking species in the galaxy had become its most powerful. Not through military might or economic dominance, but through technology that made warfare itself obsolete. And somewhere in an isolated dimensional pocket, cut off from the universe they once knew, the Zalkran Empire continued their existence. They had their worlds, their ships, their civilization intact. They had everything except the ability to harm others or be harmed by the outside universe. Whether that was mercy or cruelty remained a question that philosophers would debate for centuries to come.